Welcome to Walnut Church. Featured today is a special performance by the Round Mountain Metroplex Really Smart Young Aggie Orchestra. They each just finished their first year at Texas A&M with a 4.0. Our thanks to Reagan and Heath, their accompanist Angela, and also to cameraman Mike, video editor Ryan, preacher man Grady Zor Rowe, and to Ida and Tommy for worldwide distribution.
In today's story, we'll hear the famous last words that Jesus spoke to the disciples before he ascends to heaven and before he leaves them in charge. By the way, just for fun, I looked up famous last words of famous people, and I found the following. A notorious criminal named James Rogers was put in front of a firing squad in Utah, and he was asked if he had any last request. He replied, "Yes, please bring me a bulletproof vest." Well, that request was refused, but you have to admit, he was one clever guy to think of that. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes story, died at age 71 in his garden. He turned to his wife and said, "You are wonderful." And then he clutched his chest and died. How nice that his life ended with such beautiful final words. As she was taken to be executed, Marie Antoinette accidentally stepped on her executioner's foot, and she said sweetly to him, "Pardon-moi, monsieur." Classy last words, right? Contrast her final words with Tallulah Bankhead's, whose last words reportedly were, "More codeine, more bourbon." Well, that's a sad way to go out. I recently saw a report by Scientific American magazine about how many words the average American speaks in a day. Digital recorders were attached to 400 volunteers. They found that the average male spoke 15,699 words each day. The average female spoke 500 words more than that, 16,215. Now, as a male, I have to wonder how many of those extra words spoken by women are actually heard, because, well, we men tend to quit listening sooner. So let's meet in the middle and say we mortals speak about 15,950 words, all blended together. 15,950 words a day, average American. How many of those words matter? How many of the words you speak matter? How many of the words you speak hurt? How many of the words you speak help? Something that has a big impact on how important the words we speak are is the setting, the context, the life experience into which those words are spoken. I can recall verbatim the exact words I spoke to each of our children as we left them at college. I said to each one, each time I had to drop one off, "There is nothing you can do that will make us ever stop loving you." Spoken on a college parking lot minutes before you drive away, leaving your child and a large part of your heart behind. Those 14 words have such deeper meaning and feeling. Or, for instance, I rehearsed saying these words just so I wouldn't fall apart, and managed to actually say them to the groom as I placed my daughter's hand in his on her wedding day. I did say, "Please take care of her like we have always tried to." His reply was a good one. "Always," he said back to me, "always." I've practiced those words I don't know how many times so I could get through them without breaking down. You see, those words have far more depth and meaning because of the setting, because of the context, the situation, the experience, the moment. Okay, back to famous last words. In today's text, in his farewell address, Jesus speaks 56 well-chosen, life-changing words to the disciples. Now, these words have even greater impact, don't they, when you realize they are some of the last words that Christ will utter on earth. You with me? You follow this? These words that Jesus speaks to the disciples take on greater meaning when you realize they are some of the last words he will utter on earth. These are some of the last words the disciples will ever hear him say. And so because of that, because we know that, we should all lean in and listen carefully, because we know they are among his last words. We should pay really close attention to what he says. About now, I've used more words talking about Jesus' final words than he actually uttered final words. So let's get on to today's story. Here's the situation. After Jesus is crucified and raised from the dead, the risen Christ, alive again, briefly appears to the disciples 6 or 7 times to offer final words of instruction, challenge, and hope before ascending into heaven. In our text today, the risen Christ invites the disciples to meet him on a mountaintop where he makes a short speech to them, and just like that, he's gone. So lean in and listen to these words. Jesus' 11 disciples went to a mountain in Galilee where Jesus had told them to meet him. They saw him and worshiped him, but some of them doubted. No, wait. Some of them doubted? Yeah? When they saw Jesus, they worshiped him, but some doubted. Actually, from the Greek, a more accurate translation is this: when they saw him, they worshiped and they doubted. It had to do with adverbs and Greek and participles and verbs and so on. So the more accurate translation is, when they saw him, they worshiped him and they doubted. The word some doesn't really belong there. It's in some of the earliest texts and translations, but accurate translation is not including that word. So let's go back to, they worshiped him and they doubted, the more accurate translation. They doubted. Isn't that nice to know? Don't we all feel better hearing that the disciples, God's A-team, God's first string, sometimes even the disciples had uncertainty and doubt and qualms and misgivings. So did several other people that we think of as spiritual all-stars. Billy Graham wrote about suffering from occasional lack of confidence, and he wrote about fear of failure. Mother Teresa's letters contain these honest confessions. Lord, who am I that you should forsake me? You have thrown me away as unwanted and unloved. My emptiness is so great that nothing can touch my soul. In another letter she writes, I long for God but find no belonging and find no love. Famous evangelist Charles Spurgeon wrote about going through the long, dark night of the soul. And in a journal in 1858, he wrote, my spirits were sunken so low that I wept hour after hour like a child. I like the story of Martin Luther's wife. Luther, even though a great theologian and writer, went through these spells of brooding and doubt and depression, uncertainty. One time his wife had enough of this moping and sighing. One morning she came to breakfast all dressed in black. She put a black cloth over the windows, black cloth over the furniture. Alarmed, Luther asked her, Catherine, why are you dressed in black? Someone has died, she replied. Died, said Luther. I've not heard of anyone dying. Whoever could have died? It seems, his wife replied, from the way you're acting, that God must have died. So when the disciples saw Jesus, they all worshiped him, and they doubted. Yeah, even the disciples doubted, questioned themselves, questioned their abilities, and even questioned God sometimes. How freeing is that to hear? But like that saying, failure is not falling down. Failure is falling down and refusing to get back up. Choose this day whom you will serve, says Joshua. You get that? Choose, continue, choose. Let not your heart be troubled, Jesus said to the disciples. You get that? Let not, see, choice. Choose life, Jesus says. Let not, it's a choice. Choose life, not death. After writing about being tortured, beaten, shipwrecked, and more, Paul says, in all things I have learned to be content. You get that? Learned to be content. Faith is something to be learned, something to choose, something to be sought after. Faith is a process, a journey. Even the disciples of Paul were uncertain at times. But they didn't lose heart, and they did not quit. Let's go back to the text. Jesus said, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Go into all the world and make disciples. Baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them everything I have told you. I will be with you always, even until the end of the world. Go make disciples. That doesn't mean make people be disciples, coerce them, pressure them, force them. That means it's more along the line of enlist them. Not make them, force them. Of course, we've all had some religious group knock on our door and try to manipulate us into their point of view. Or we've all been to a funeral where some preacher hardly mentions the deceased and instead launches into an emotional, manipulative sermon aimed at scaring you into believing like he does. Fred Craddock mentioned the story of Jesus and the rich young ruler. Jesus invites the man to a relationship with God instead of with goods. And the man says, I just don't get it. Not worth it. And he leaves. And Jesus gives him room to make up his own mind, you see? He doesn't scold the man or follow him, ranting and coercing. He allows him to make his decision and go. One time Jesus did a preaching mission in a town, and there all week, no one came. Everybody ignored him. The disciples asked him, are you going to ask God to burn the town and smite the people? And Jesus said, no, we'll go somewhere else where the people will listen. So he gives them room to decide. Jesus gave people room to decide for themselves, Fred Craddock says. So a more accurate translation of our text is, go and enlist disciples, or go and disciple everybody. Discipling uses a verb, disciple people. Go teach people, show them what it is to be a follower of Christ by how you live. In other words, ask yourself, is Christ alive in me? Can anybody tell? Lots of people have not made me want to be a disciple, but have still discipled me with their faith. I was sitting at the bedside of a man named Bob Hudson, a bass in the church I was serving in the choir there. I sat by his bedside. I told him how I remembered every Easter he always sang a song called The Holy City. Beautiful solo, triumphant solo that he sang every Easter. And I said, Bob, I remember how he also always on Easter would sing The Holy City. And he began to sing that to me as he lay dying in that hospital bed. He was glowing, he was radiant, he was happy, he was joy-filled. And as he finished, we prayed together, and I stood up to leave. And this Christ-like, kind, loving, gentle, sweet, encouraging man said to me, Grady, I love you. I left there blessed, strengthened, because he had just taught me what being a follower of Christ looks like. He taught me what being a follower of Christ looks like. In other words, he discipled me that day. A couple of days later, I was sitting at the bedside of a kind, warm man named Ed Morris. I got ready to leave, and he told me he wanted to thank me for being his pastor. He knew he didn't have much time left, and he said, I just want to thank you, Grady, for being my pastor for these years, and I want to, please tell the church family for me that I'm so grateful for all of them and what they meant to me and how much at home I felt in that congregation. And I got ready to leave, and he said, just a minute. And he lifted his hands in the air, and I saw his lip moving. Lifted his hand kind of toward me, and I saw his lips moving, and I realized he was praying for me. He was giving me his blessing, his spiritual blessing. I left there strengthened, moved, awed, because he had just taught me what a follower of Christ looks like. It's not so much about making someone become a disciple as much as it is about discipling someone. That's how you disciple, by living the kind of life that helps them know Christ because they know you know him. One pastor shares a fantasy about what happened right after Jesus finishes his farewell address and ascends. In this pastor's fantasy, the angel Gabriel intercepts Jesus and starts talking with him. Master, what next for those mortals? And Jesus replies, well, I asked Simon, James, Andrew, John, and some other disciples to make it their business, to go into the world and tell others about me. And those in turn will tell others, and they will tell others, and they will tell others, and so on, Jesus says. Gabriel's not convinced. Lord, don't take this the wrong way, but what if Simon Peter and Andrew and James and John and the others give up, or get tired, or forget, or fail? What happens is some of them don't keep the vision and keep the story and keep the message alive. What's the backup plan? There is no backup plan, Jesus replies. We are counting on them. You see, the disciples are the plan. I am the plan. You are the plan. Is Christ alive in you? If so, can anybody tell? There's a popular old hymn. Let me read some of these lyrics. It may not be on the mountain height or o'er the stormy sea. It may not be at the battle's front. My Lord will have need of me. But if by a still small voice he calls the path that I do not know, I'll answer, dear Lord, with my hand in thine. I'll go where you want me to go. Perhaps today there are loving words which Jesus would have me speak. There may be now in the paths of sin some wanderer that I should seek. O Savior, thou wilt be my guide. Though dark and rugged the way, my voice will echo your message sweet. I'll say what you want me to say. I'll go where you want me to go, dear Lord, o'er mountain or plain or sea. I'll say what you want me to say, dear Lord. I'll be what you want me to be. Let's pray. I know, God, wherever I have traveled, you will be with me. There is nowhere I can go, no situation I can face which is outside of your love and strength. And so I commit myself into your care and keeping on life's journey, knowing that at all times I am in your hands. Amen.